nice introduction. But do we know that an average of 355.4 million metric tons of plastic waste are produced annually in the entire world? How do we optimize this plastic waste generation for environmental sustainability? In view of this, our presentation will attempt to address some of the issues connected to plastic waste in Ghana. Our content is made up of introduction. We will try to talk about the general overview of plastic waste. We also use, since the research is pertaining to Ghana, we are using Ghana as a case study, and we draw conclusion from the research. Now, let's talk about introduction. We know that plastic is considered as a social good, but it has become a global, severe anthropogenic phenomenon for the world to solve in recent times. Plastics are now considered as omnipresent, which implies they are found everywhere on this earth. And this increasing trend needs an urgent attention. It is also considered that 2 million plastic bags are used in every minute globally, which implies that as this one continues to grow, as population continues to grow, and times continues to add up, we are producing a lot of plastic waste. Right from 1950 to 2018, there has been a global production of plastic waste which has increased to 6.3 billion metric tons. Studies done by some researchers. Now let's talk about the trend, the global trends of plastic waste, starting from 2018 to 2020 or 2020. Now, right from 2016 to 2019, there has been a gradual increase of plastic waste generation from time to time. And with the exception of 2020, there was a sharp reduction. This was due to the surge of the COVID-19, which aided the shutdown of industrial production. So in 2020, there was virtually a small amount of, or the plastic generated were basically not up as we expected for it to increase. Companies were shut down and production line decreased. It is considered that in average, using the trend right from 2016 to 2020, an average of 355.4 million metric tons of plastics is produced globally. And out of this amount, 12% is incinerated, 9% recycled, and 79% is untreated. And where does this untreated plastic waste goes? It is estimated that 29% or 79% of the 355.4 million metric tons annually generate up to, that is the actual figure becomes 281 million metric tons. That is the amount of waste or amount of plastic that goes into the environment. And where do they go? Some of them gets into the sea or the oceans, the rivers, and others also goes to the terrestrial lands. And scientists have observed that about 8 million metric tons of plastic waste end up in the ocean every year. And this is expected to double by 2025. Now, what are some of the effects of plastic waste produced on human and environment? In most African countries or developing countries where we mostly use our tourist destination as a means of survival or as a means of generating money, some of this plastic waste gets around those areas and destroys the beauty of our tourist sites. The plastic also, as a result of incineration or burning, contribute to climate change and respiratory diseases. We also find out that most of the plastics, when it gets into the shores, into the seas, they come to the shorelines and affects the shipping infrastructure, and also the fishing and other aquaculture and other living organisms that live within the sea. And also, we also know that another effect of plastic is to release harmful chemical substance or chlorine into the soil, which end up in plants and animals and affect the food chain or the food cycle that it always depends on. We also know that most of the plastics waste are usually accumulated in gutters or drainage and cause flooding, as the picture shown over there, which this picture we took this picture from Joy Online, mostly which is a picture from Ghana. Those plastics get into the gutters, accumulates, and when it rains, they passes through the drains, and probably they can get choked up at some point and cause overflooding, or it allows the water to flood or flow to the land and cause flooding. And these plastics also get their way into the rivers and seas, which add up to the existing plastics in the oceans and the rivers. Also, the second picture photograph shown also is a drain with plastics in there, which serve as an area of breeding of other insects or pathogens or bacteria. These bacteria causes a lot of diseases, malaria, and serve as a source of breeding source for other microorganisms, and this affects human. Also, we also realize that most of the plastics that gets into the rivers affects the living organisms within the rivers and cause the other organisms in the seas or rivers to die, and that affects that contributes to the inability to achieve the SDG goal 14, which is life under sea, life in the water. These are all because if you look at the picture, you see all the plastic go in there, and you see some birds dead, and some of the animals also end up feeding the plastics, which are attached to their consumable food that they eat. All these are some of the effects of exposing or putting all this indiscriminate disposal of plastics in and around our environment. We contribute to the 79% untreated plastics waste. Now, how do we optimize this plastics waste or this problem? Now, for sustainability, one of the most important things which is very essential in order to optimize this is to ensure that we are able to adapt the 4 R's, the 5 R's. That is the refusal, which equate to prevention, reduce, reuse, recycle, and recover. Now, in the refuse or the refusal is the process where government policies may be such a way that we will be prevented from using the plastic waste, as done by Rwanda, or possibly using less materials made from petroleum products to manufacture plastics. We can also go into reduce, whereby we are able to reduce the plastics that are used by lowering amount of plastics that we produce. We try as much as possible to reduce the amount of plastics that we produce in order to lower our plastics in the environment because we are not able to use it well. Another way is to reuse, which is done in some of the developing countries. Sometimes because of shortage of other material, they use other plastics material as a means of filling water, as a means of using it for other things which are permissible, which is also good for our system. We can also use plastic by reusing it, by repeatedly using it again. Then we also another important thing is to recycle, or what we call recycle. That is able to convert plastics to other use, to other purposes, as shown, which is mostly done in some of the companies within Ghana. But another way also to optimize plastics aside the 5 R's is to use the worm decomposer, which a lot of studies have gone to show that worm decomposers such as the worm plus, the mealworm or the waxworm, they are means of way of decomposing the plastics for environmental health or for environmental good. We can also go into growth of natural plants to replace the petroleum way of producing the plastics. Now, some of the plants that we use for the natural plant can be the conifers or the pine trees. They produce some saps, and those saps can be converted or can be converted into plastics for reuse. Since they are natural, they can easily decompose when they get into the environment. Or another way also to optimize is the building of human capacity, logistics, infrastructures, which are lacked, or which most of the developing countries or sub-Saharan African countries are lacking, the infrastructure-wise, in order to manage our plastic that we produce. With all this, we know for fact in Ghana here that we import 2.58 million metric tons of raw plastic annually. In every year, 2.58 million metric tons of plastic or raw plastics are annually imported into the country. And out of this, more than 1 million metric tons of the plastics produced annually serve as plastic waste. So, with all this amount of plastic waste which are generated, where did they go? We also know for a fact that less than or within 5% of those plastics are recycled. The remaining gets into the environment, affecting our ecological system. And how do we minimize this? From Ghana case studies, there have been some studies how plastics are innovated for other production. As the diagram shows over there, A, which is a plastic waste or a raw plastic material, is being converted into other materials or innovated into other materials for recycling. Now the first B is for pavement blocks. And the pavement blocks shown over there for B are used for pavement blocks are used for pavements, and they are manufactured from plastics and sand. This is done by shredding a certain amount of plastics and combining it with a certain amount of sand in the proportion of 70 against 30. 70 shredded plastics combined with 30% of sand, put together with Ghanaian-made fabricated machine used for the pavement blocks. And C and D are also ways in which some of the plastics materials are converted into artifacts. and other forms of what? Ornamental mats, pictures, clocks, and all those things. The materials are picked, cut, washed, cleaned, and sold or modified to form those materials or those products that we are seeing there. And they are very beautiful. And I will not mind if you request for some, we will try to get you some if you need it. They are so beautiful. Now, how do this important innovation hubs in Ghana's economy? Now, environmentally, the waste, plastic waste that are collected from the streets reduces the plastics from the environment. So the amount of waste, plastic waste on the streets are collected, which reduces the plastics that might contaminate and cause flooding in the environment. So in the other way around, do the production, the people goes to the environment, collects the plastics on the street, and that helps to reduce the plastics that are lying on the street that might cause flooding, that might serve as an area for breeding of what? Mosquitoes, growth of cockroaches. In the other way around, it will break the chain of disease transmission, which serve as a source of microbial growth. So through their work, it helps this. And after doing this, how did this one contribute to SDG goals? Now, SDG goal 3, when they collect the which is good health and well-being, that is, when they collect the waste, they prevent the environment being dirty, and that reduces the amount of diseases that ought to be transmitted from people to people, and that helps in reducing SDG 3. It also helps to promote clean water and sanitation, which is goal 6, because all those wastes are collected, so they don't get their access to the streams, the rivers, and the seas, and that brings about clean water and sanitation. It also helps for sustainable cities and communities. It makes the environment clean, which is goal number 11. It also aids life below water, which is goal number 14, and also life on land, because when it rains, the drains collects the wastewater, it gets into the sea, and that affects the water, and those that found on the land, they collect it, so it makes the environment clean. Then economically, the activities, what happens? It serves as a source of employment, that people get job to do, because as they collect the plastics from the environment within the community, they send it to the company or those who fabricate or use the plastic for other materials, and they are being paid. So it serves as a source of what? Employment for the youth and the people within the environment. And one wonderful thing that we have to know as a fact is that the production of the pavement blocks are more resilient compared to the one we use the normal cement. This because the plastics have some chemicals which bring about cohesive force or the bonding force, which is more stronger than the one produced from what? The cement. And one advantage also is that because of that, it is mostly used in areas where we have the flood or where we have the waterlogged area. So we use those pavements made from plastics in waterlogged area because they have lower water absorption capacity. And also used in the saline. Most of the Ghana where we have the sea area or we are closer to the seashore, this kind of pavement blocks can be used over there. And economically, the activity of the innovation helps to contribute positively to goal number 1, lowering the poverty level of the people, because they are working, they take the plastics and go and sell, they get small amount of money in it, and that lowers their poverty level. It also brings about zero hunger. When you sell, you get money. When you get money, you can then get something to buy food to eat, which also promote that. It's also aid in goal 6, that decent work and economic growth. Because they are working, they take money, and that promotes their growth economically. Also goal 9, which is industrial innovation. They produce the artifact that I showed. The plastics are used for the bags, the wall cloth, the mat, for pavement blocks. These are innovative infrastructures that are being produced. And also goal 10, reducing inequality, because both men and women are working. So there's a kind of equality. This is not restricted for only men, or it's not restricted for only women. So there's a kind of equal among each other. And also sustainable cities, because these products are used to build wonderful things, pavement layouts and other things that help to make cities more beautiful. And socially, which is the last thing, from the innovative idea, it helps the people, the manufacturers, introduce education, because they try to educate the people the essence of not discriminating classes around. So it helps to reduce the indiscriminate disposal of plastics through education, and also help to promote social cohesion and empowerment among the people for sustainability awareness, which aid in goal 11, that is sustainable cities. Goal 12, which is for responsible consumption and production, and goal 1, which reduces poverty. So socially, economically, and environmentally, the production of those innovative ideas aid the country, aside reducing the plastics that are produced within the environment. Other means in which government is trying to do to optimize plastic waste generation in Ghana is coming up with strategic policies, planning, intersectoral collaboration, capacity building, good governance, or inclusiveness through behavioral change and environmental awareness. And that also contributes, or that will lead to sustainable environment. That is, we are able to sustain the plastics, or that will help us to be able to sustain the plastic that we produce. In a nutshell, we can finally say that the development and survival of human society thrives in serene and innovative environments. But the improper management of plastic waste is detrimental to environment, leading to climate change, tourism sites, and inability for animals, among others. Hence, in order to optimize the plastic waste generation through proper management, we have to ensure that there's stakeholders, policymakers, individual, and committed, innovative way of addressing these issues. Because all the people, stakeholders, must take part, innovative ideas in order to generate plastic waste from other means should also be more intensive, so that we will be able to produce plastics or use the plastics which are disposed into the environment for other means, for good purposes. In this way, this can be done, or we can also reduce plastic waste in environment through education, political commitment, which is very important, inclusiveness, shared responsibilities. Everybody should patronize in how we look at our environment, so that we will be able to achieve the SDG 4 goals. In this